Welcome, everyone, to the latest edition of StateScoop's webinar series. I'm your host, Jake Williams, StateScoop's Manager of Strategic Initiatives. Today we're taking a look inside the Golden State of California, and we're hearing about how they've tackled cloud computing with the largest information technology budget in the nation. Joining us today is one of the thought leaders who makes California's cloud operations successful, Rob Schmidt, the Chief of California's Office of Technology Services, which is housed inside the Department of Technology. At OTEC, Schmidt leads the state's data center efforts and supports state programs and departments through agile, cost-effective, innovative, reliable, and secure technology. Schmidt was appointed to lead OTEC by California Governor Jerry Brown in September of 2015. Before that, Schmidt led technology efforts in the state's Department of Food and Agriculture as that agency's Chief Information Officer. In total, Rob has spent just a little more than 2 decades in California state government and several years in the private sector as well. Thanks, Rob, for joining us today.
Thank you, Jake, and thank you, StateScoop, for inviting us here today. We're pleased to be here.
Glad to hear it. I also want to take time to thank our StateScoop audience for taking the time to tune into the recorded version of today's webinar. And with that, let's get started. Rob, California took a pretty innovative look at cloud computing with CalCloud. Tell us a little bit about how you got there and where you're taking the platform.
Absolutely. Let me give you a little background first. First in terms of myself, I've actually been involved now with 6 consolidations, so I see this as number 7 in my career. Cloud is just yet, for me, another consolidation, and I'm going to talk today as to why is that. Just also as foundation is the primary principle I use in my career, throughout my career, is to standardize, centralize, and consolidate. I follow these 3 principles in a lot of efforts that I work on, so I'll be talking about that too. So people frequently ask me, what is CalCloud? And so I'm going to start with that. CalCloud is a suite of services, including infrastructure as a service and vendor-hosted subscription services. That also includes email. So these services are offered to our customer organizations, which we have over 300 at Department of Technology. And we offer that through our service catalog that you can find online. Our customers include state, county, city, and educational entities throughout the state of California. So we now have over 50 customers using these CalCloud services. So how do we provide these services? They're provided through a portal. We have a self-service portal that customers use for on-demand access to a shared pool of computing resources that can be rapidly provisioned and released through virtual servers on a pay-as-you-go basis. We also have add-on options such as increased storage, memory, disaster recovery, and backups that are available to our customers. So what is our mission? So our mission with CalCloud is to offer effective cloud solutions that provide customers convenient, on-demand access to a shared pool of configurable resources. And why is that? Customers are being driven to work faster to deliver at the speed of business. And that's what CalCloud enables them to do. So I'm going to talk about that. So what are some of the challenges that we encounter? So as I mentioned, I've been through 6 prior consolidation efforts. A lot of times it's actually not technology itself, it's the people and the processes. And that is internal politics is one of the main challenges facing consolidation programs. And some of the concerns that we received, they could be real issues or they could be uncertainties, and we have to address those. So I frequently meet with our customers. In fact, I spend most of my time talking with CIOs and agency information officers throughout our state. And while some of the ideas and thoughts brought forward are smokescreens because they don't want to migrate or there's other issues, really is we have to get to the underlying concern and address those concerns. And sometimes that's fear of personal impact by consolidation. And so what can we do? There's a number of things we can do. First of all is assign a strong senior leader. And why is that? We want somebody that can help create that vision and that need to migrate to a new environment, a new platform. Create job change agents. So within departments, we reach out to our agency information officers and chief information officers and determine best those that would be able to help us through our migrations. We create new job roles. So as we look at moving from a data center environment within departments to either a primary data center or into the cloud, we have to consider new job roles for folks. What about the hundreds of people doing this kind of work today, maintaining servers and storage and networks? What is that going to look like in the future? I think the future is bright. In fact, there's many new job roles that are opening up. If you look at the areas of project management, security, enterprise architecture, solutions architecture, cloud architecture, Cloud architecture hasn't existed in the past in the state government, so now we're seeing that. And so what do? We retrain for these new roles, provide adequate training, both on-the-job training and formal training for staff to work in these new environments. And so as we look at it, is other things that come up is the movement of staff for knowledge transfer, maintenance of our current services. How do we maintain our existing environments and legacy environments? And how do we keep our employees involved in how we're doing cloud services? And why is that important? When people are involved, they're engaged, and that's what we want. So as we came into this, I would describe it about 9 months ago, we brought in a new strategy and governance to CalCloud. We called it CalCloud 2.0. And why is that? CalCloud was ready to go for full production. So we needed to get the information out there. We needed people to understand what is our plan and our roadmap. And so we did that. We came up with a technology roadmap discussing things such as software as a service, how people can leverage CalCloud. We did a marketing effort with the different departments and brought many new adopters on board. And that's been successful, as I'll talk about. So what are some of the issues that we face? So as we're working with CalCloud, is we're having to go out and talk to our customers. In some cases, migrations are fairly simple. And I'm going to give you an example in a few moments from California Food and Ag, where I came from. But in other cases, they're more difficult. So the different types of assessments that we have are internal assessments. These can be conducted with our own Office of Technology Services architects. They can come in and meet with the customer and advise them the different options they have and offer solutions. We've also done pilot assessments. So leveraging a vendor partner, we offered initially 10 free assessments that they would come in, work with the department, fully document a particular system, and advise them if it was a good candidate for the cloud, because not every system is. In some cases, we've advised them not to move it to the cloud, but in other cases, we found ideal candidates for the cloud. And then also, too, is we're working with customers on individual assessment and migration contracts. So as customers bring forward ideas and problems, we can address those through a formal document that will advise them how to migrate to the new environment and actually do the migration, which is important to some customers. And we're currently working with a large customer now that has a large Oracle database and a large application that needs to be migrated. And what's good about it is the platform is currently operating in a Linux-type environment, and the new platform will be operating in a Linux-type environment. So it's a matter of figuring out how we're going to do the migration. What's our backup plan if it doesn't work right? How do we do the testing of all this? So that's a long process. It can take, for a large system, 6 to 9 months to migrate, largely due to all the planning efforts. But that's no different than migrating as we've done in the past. It's just that we need to now involve folks that work with cloud. In terms of migration assistance, I've seen different combinations used. We've seen departments work directly with my department. We've had vendor partners and then also third parties that were involved. So really it's a question of what works best for the customer in that particular situation. And also, too, is considering existing contracts. In some cases, vendor contracts that we have in place today in the state have offboarding. So there may be the ability to leverage an existing contract to help with migration assistance. So that's been helpful to know. And as ultimately I'd like to share with folks is what our customers really want. They want IT to be fast, cheap, and good. So that's what we try to deliver on with our customers. So what are some tools? So I'll give you an example. And tools can take place in different forms. It's not just buying software tools I'm talking about. Is what are ways we can work with our vendors to better migrate? So in the example of California Food and Agriculture, I'll give you some background. I was there for about 4.5 years. And in that department, we had a number of systems, well over 100 systems, that were based on a database backend and a web front end. And so we migrated one system initially. We were an early adopter of CalCloud and moving to the infrastructure as a service model. And it worked very well for us. Not that we didn't have issues, but it did work very well. And so well, we migrated additional 79 systems over a 90-day period. And it was a very simple process we actually developed to do the migrations in terms of dumping out data from databases and migrating the web applications over and doing the testing. But what was interesting about it was, as we were doing migrations, we were finding bugs in our code, things that we didn't realize before that were problems, and we were able to fix that. So actually in doing the migration, we were able to clean up code and make our overall system perform better. In fact, in some cases, if a customer didn't realize that we didn't migrate it, they were actually asking us, why is it performing so much faster now? Well, that's because on the back end, they were using servers that were 5 years newer. And on the back end, they were using storage that was significantly faster than what they had before. So I think it's a great example of how you can leverage existing tools and how you can improve on your processes and how you can improve on your own applications through migration. So two is, as you're looking at tool sets, and this is something we've recommended, is consider your disaster recovery use case. And why is that? Well, in a disaster recovery situation, you need to be able to migrate to something else quickly. And that's been helpful to us as we document. So the types of questions we look at are the types of platforms you're going to be working with, various migration models, specific applications are going to move an entire image over, the different types of cloud providers that the tool works with. In some cases, they work with a few, in other cases, many. What is your fallback model if anything fails? How do you do discovery? And what is the time for migration? How fast is it? What kinds of feeds do you have? So these are just some things to consider. So who's using CalCloud today? Right now we have over 50 customers using CalCloud services. And these are customers that are state government, these are local government, these are educational institutions, these are many different folks throughout this entire state of California. And most recently, we've been reaching out to the California community colleges. I was just doing a meeting there last week, reaching out to the UC system, the CSU system for education. And we hope to provide services throughout our state. So those are just some few things to think about. I would like to open it up at this point to any questions that the audience may have.
Sure thing, Rob. Thanks so much. And I definitely have a few here to ask you. I think it was really cool that you were able to bring up your experience at Food and Ag when you helped kind of pioneer that move to CalCloud. So I want to pick up on a note that your last slide there that boasted the bunch of those different state agencies and local governments who have signed on to use CalCloud. What services are they using most within CalCloud, and what do you really see the most demand for?
That's a good question, Jake, and it's really shifted over time. Currently, as I mentioned, we have a total of 50 customers using CalCloud services. It's broken out to be 27 that are infrastructure as a service customers and 23 that are VHSS customers. I imagine a few of those are overlapping. And what is VHSS? It's the Vendor Host and Solution Services. And without diving into the vendor names, I'll say that it represents things such as a CRM, portfolio management, service desk, and desktop productivity applications. We're also expanding out. Right now we have a contract out on this street for bid for human resources management, and this is something that people have asked for. We're also looking at digital signature and electronic signature, and you can imagine the benefits that'll provide to our different constituents.
That's really cool. And when you were at Food and Ag, I mean, what challenges did you see initially with CalCloud, and how did you weather those challenges and get to the point where you're actually making that move? And the reason I'm asking that question is because I'm sure that there are a bunch of other state agencies or local governments that have similar questions, and tell us a little bit how you would win over those customers.
Absolutely. That is a great question. So as I mentioned early in my presentation, really the hard part is about cultural change. It's about getting people to move from X to Y. And I found what was helpful was doing a formal assessment working with a third party, and that is show me the numbers. In terms of working with my CFO, that's what they wanted to know is show me the numbers. Is this really cheaper? Can I save money? But also, too, is I think the qualitative of what can I do with my staff? And sometimes that as an explanation is even more important of okay, let's say I have 10 staff currently working with servers and storage, and they can be re-provisioned within the organization and retrained to perform higher level functions, in some cases maybe even get promotions, doing things like solutions architecture, enterprise architecture. Well, even no matter where the system is, we still need technical people that can make that happen.
That's a great answer. And you mentioned in your presentation about, how when you talk to some of these agencies, there are some instances where, a cloud alternative might not be the best. What kind of agencies, did you recommend, hey, maybe CalCloud isn't the best thing for you, and how did you then help them find the solution that was right?
I was going to joke and say, yes, of course it's the best. No, but here's the thing is it could be that the type of system they're operating, let's say, is cross-platform. We have instances in the state where solutions provided by prior vendors through projects resided on multiple different types of operating systems. And without a major re-architecture, it wouldn't work well in the cloud. So, in some cases like that, we've advised them to stay with what they have or wait for a refresh. And sometimes what happens is, as you look at the total cost of ownership of an environment, you discover that the system's due for refresh, let's say, in 3 or 4 years. That might be an ideal time to migrate.
That's a fascinating perspective. Another thing that I was thinking about is, I've been following, CalCloud for the last year or so, and I've been talking to your CIO and a bunch of folks in your department all about it. How has the vendor community, been supporting this effort? I mean, how easygoing have those vendors been when you've been trying to get them, to get their services on CalCloud, and where do you see that vendor, state partnership going forward?
Very good question. I think, in the first year, I would say the first year, that would be 2014 to mid-2015, it was pretty tough go because people were questioning, was this going to be successful? Is this going to work? Are people going to want to adopt this? And then two is vendors were wondering what's their part in the big picture. And really that's what we've laid out. So going back to our strategy, we laid that out with vendors. And in fact, we've been, as I say, over-communicating. We're trying to get information out there to our vendor community that they're part of this and that they can participate. We're opening up opportunities all the time now with vendors through these vendor-hosted solution services. And so they're pretty excited. So as I talk to folks, I try to be that matchmaker. I'm out there talking with over 300 different CIOs throughout our state. At the same time, I'm talking with hundreds of vendors who are selling products and services. So I try to be that matchmaker. So in some cases, we're not talking about CalCloud. It may be a solution that they have. But then as I look at it and I hear multiple needs from CIOs, I can then consider, hey, maybe this will make a good VHSS service that we can then put in CalCloud on contract for folks. So we're trying to open the doors for many different venues that will attract both our customers and our vendor population.
That's great, and I'm glad you brought up that attracting more customers because that segues perfectly into my next question, which is, going forward, what's the end vision in terms of getting other governmental bodies online with CalCloud? I mean, what strategies do you plan to use to convince them to come on board to the service?
Right. I think there's many good reasons and benefits that I share with folks. One is understand that California does have a cloud-first policy, and that requires customers, as they're bringing systems online and new projects, to consider cloud first, and particularly CalCloud, whether it be infrastructure as a service or software as a service. However, if it doesn't work in those particular environments, then there are other options available to them. Also, too, is by leveraging CalCloud, the customers can leverage their existing data center budget. Within departments in California, state departments, they have a line item for the data center budget. And as long as they can keep within that data center budget, it's very easy for them to move to new environments. And in fact, in some cases, customers are finding it less expensive to operate in the new environment, which frees up money they can use for other things such as innovation. Also, too, is realize that we provide the opportunity for enterprise service level agreements. Never before has a data center or our data center had enterprise service level agreements, and we have operating level agreements with the vendors we work with. Also, too, is the ability to get contracts in place quickly. So If you look at the Microsoft agreement we have now, it's very easy for folks to purchase Microsoft Office 365 licensing through Office of Technology Services. It just requires a simple service request. Two is also ease of server provisioning. So once customers have access to the portal for CalCloud, they can quickly spin up or spin down a server. And two is look at the standardization of the state's portfolio for subscription services. Rather than offering 10 or 15 for a particular segment, let's say HRM, we can offer a handful. And this would provide options, but as well as providing services that are needed at a good price. And then that leads to my final point, really, is the idea of volume prices and economies of scale. Realize with the state of California, we're talking of massive scale. With over just state alone 220,000 employees, we have a large purchasing volume to work with and can get the best prices for our customers.
Absolutely. And again, there you go, segueing into my next question. You mentioned budgeting a couple times in there, and traditionally, across state governments, we see how cloud computing and cloud technologies can really, save a state government money in the long run. What kind of cost savings are we seeing in California with CalCloud? And if we're not seeing them yet, what does that forecast look like for cost savings in the future?
Right. Good question. So I can partially answer this and say that consolidation savings in my career have always been back-ended. That way, we discover it later, and I think that's what you'll see here. But I'll give you an example. A customer working with right now, just through consolidation of a large database agreement and having an enterprise agreement on CalCloud saves them $1.5 million over a 5-year time period. And that's just the database component of it. And so that's customers very eager to migrate to our environment. There's another customer we're talking with that's going to be potentially migrating a system. And again, savings in the millions of dollars. And so we're keeping track of this. So I think over time we can better share this kind of information. But what I recommend folks to consider is the intangibles, things such as the better utilization of staff resources. So rather than staff having to worry about maintaining servers and storage, they can focus on really what's important, is that's delivering value to the customer. Because as a CIO, what I discovered was customers don't recognize the people that work in the back rooms making things happen. And granted, though, as a CIO, they're important people to me, but at the same time is my customers didn't see that. But by customers seeing these same folks working with them collaboratively, delivering value, that helps everyone.
Absolutely. That's really cool. And I know you were at, during the true inception and build out of CalCloud as we know it today, I know you were still the CIO for Food and Ag, but, can you tell me a little bit about the process of kind of getting all of the senior leaders in government on board with this project and getting everyone that needed to be a part of it, to become a part of it, and just for some of those states who may be tuning in and listening and watching this, who may be wanting to do something like CalCloud?
Absolutely. For other state leaders, I do open my door for them to contact me, but at the same time is to answer this question, it's all about governance, and that is, and also your relationships working with people. I think from a governance structure, you have to create, for California, realize we're very federated, and we have many different departments. So at the state level alone, about 130 departments that we work with. So those could be departments that report to the governor's office through the executive branch, or it could be other branches of government, or it could be constitutional offices. And sometimes it can be done through mandates, but that's not the recommended way. We like to have collaboration with our customers and understand what their needs are and build off those needs. So here's what I recommend is have a formal governance structure. We leverage what's called in California our agency information officers. We have 10 of those representing 10 different agencies. We also have, as I mentioned, 130 departments, so that's 130 CIOs that indirectly report to those agency information officers, but not in all cases. And what we leverage that with is we have pretty much biweekly meetings with these agency information officers, and we ask them questions. We go to them with our questions, and we help have them prioritize what the needs are for the state. I get many inquiries, probably like many folks here that are listening today, from our vendor community. And what I do is, working with my customers, I understand is, here's our top 10 priorities for the next year. It may be in areas such as security or human resources management or digital signatures. But I know that for a fact because I talk to my customers. And two is working with our CIOs. We're actually doing a survey right now of all CIOs in state government to find out what their needs are, to further clarify what we're doing. And that is just to understand is, looking to the future, looking out the next 1 to 3 years, where are we headed? And by getting that information and by vetting that information and vetting the policies that are coming forward through our governance structure, we have a lot better buy-in than we did years ago.
That's a great point. That's a really cool way, about, you kind of outlined for us a little bit how, what you guys have done with CalCloud kind of sets the vision for how California is going to handle technology going forward, and that's a really exciting prospect, especially if it follows the model that CalCloud has followed. Rob, I think that's all the questions I have for you. Is there anything else that you wanted to go over with CalCloud?
I just want to, again, thank StateScoop for the opportunity to speak today. It's a great opportunity to share what we've been doing in the great golden state of California, as you started with. Again, I appreciate this time, and if there's any questions out there, folks are welcome to contact me directly too. Thank you.
Absolutely, and thank you, Rob, for sharing some of the essential lessons that you and your organization have learned with CalCloud and how you've shifted and grown it since its inception. I want to invite our audience to look for more of our coverage on cloud computing and transformation and all other state government IT coverage at StateScoop.com. And finally, on behalf of all of us here at StateScoop, this is your host, Jake Williams. Thanks again for being with us.